Alright, so I want to welcome everybody to the third installment of my Fundamentals of Filming video editing edition here. If you haven't seen the last two episodes, the first one's talking about going over the project and where everything is. The second episode, we actually brought all our clips in and set them up on our timeline, and we synced them up with our music. What we're going to do for this third video is I'm actually going to show you the basic editing on these clips. We're going to go over these tools right here in your toolbar here, as well as working within the timeline and understanding the timeline here. So I have I actually have 3 video clips, and they're all synced up with the audio track, and I showed you how to do that in the last video. And so what we have right here is we have these they toggle the tracks on and off. What this basically means is if I click on this, you're going to see the track you're going to see this track, because this track's below it. The layers work is everything that is stacked on top has first priority, so you're going to see this. So we'll click on this. So right now we have this clip selected. If I kill that, if I click on that and toggle track output, and it has an X on it, that'll actually disable that track. We won't see it. And now we're seeing the track below it. If I click on that and disable that, now we're seeing the track below that. So you're seeing how this works, how when we stack these clips like that, it's the priorities from the top clip to the bottom clip. And one thing that I'll go ahead and say is when you're working on a project like this, especially for like music videos, you're going to have lots of tracks in here, because what happens is when I do my performance edits, I bring the whole clip in and I stack them, and I basically pick and choose what part of each clip I want to use for the final video. Now what happens in that case is look, we only have 3 tracks. Well, we're kind of running out of room. You have 2 options. I'll show you something right here. We'll bring it in. This is not going to be synced, but just for demonstration purposes, if we want to add a track, we can simply drag down and it'll add that track on there. That's actually not the way I like to do it. I actually like to set up multiple tracks at the same time rather than keep dragging and dropping. If you go to sequence, and you're going to go all the way down towards the bottom, you're going to see add tracks. Now this is going to give you the option of adding video tracks as well as audio tracks. I usually don't need any more than 3 tracks of audio for doing music videos, but I do like a lot of video tracks because I'm going to be adding not only performance shots in there, I'm going to be adding B-roll in there, I'm going to be adding effects in there, all kinds of stuff. So you could potentially need maybe 10 video tracks by it's all said and done. But what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and actually add a bunch at once. So we'll just go ahead and add 5. Now you're going to see now I have 9 tracks of video. It gives me a lot more options to work with. I can stack things. Now one thing I'll say with these were clips that were shot in 4K. Even though they're downscaled, they're still the system still kind of your computer still kind of looks at them as a 4K clip, and they take a lot of processing. And you'll see here with all the processing going on, you can get away with stacking 2 clips, but if you get 3 clips, you're going to see it start stuttering here. See, it's stuttering there. The computer's really having a hard time reading this, just because it's so much information it's trying to process at once. It's trying to process all 3 tracks at once, even though you're only looking at the top one. So when we're going to basic editing, I work on 1 track at a time, and what I do is I disable every track that's below it. So if we have 3 tracks, I'm going to kill video track 1 and video track 2. So now the computer is actually only going to read the top track, and you'll see it's playing smooth again. Now we select all those and have everything processing at once. It'll eventually catch up and it'll lag on you. So when I'm working on a track, I actually have everything below it killed, so that way it's not bogging up the processor and the video card. It just allows for smoother playback. So the tools I'm going to be using most when it comes to this, I'm going to show you all of them. The tools I'm going to be using the most are actually right next to each other. It's going to be the razor tool and the rate stretch tool. I'm just going to go ahead and start from the top here. Your track select forward. You're going to see a bunch of arrows here. If you want to click on that, it's basically going to select everything, and so you can move everything at once, so you don't have to worry about things sliding out of sync or anything like that. And this is the same thing. It's just gonna move it backwards. It's going to deselect them. So you have select them all, and then unselect them all, and we'll always revert back to the selection tool, which is always going to be V. Like I said, I'm very adamant about learning your keyboard shortcuts, because they save you a ton of time. Rather than going from here up to here and selecting this and coming back down, if you just simply use your keyboard shortcuts, like right here, I'm going to use the C tool, the razor tool. So I selected that, and say I hit this. Now I want to go back and change to my main selector tool. If I do that and come back down, it's wasted motion. So what I actually do is just learn the keyboard shortcuts. So there's going to be 3 of them that we're going to mainly focus on here. It's going to be the razor tool, which is the keyboard shortcut C, the rate stretch tool, which is R, and the selection tool is V. So if you remember, R for rate, C for cut, and V, I don't know how V fits in with selection, but it's something easy to remember. These other tools right here, the ripple edit tool basically just allows you to, like, say we'll go ahead and make a cut right here. We'll use the ripple edit tool. It actually just lets you move the cut from one spot to the other. So rather than having to delete your cut and create a new cut, this just lets you move it to a spot that you want more. And what I'll say, I'm not saying it right now, but Control Z is your friend. It's Control Z is basically the back function or the undo function. So anything you do, if you hit Control Z, it'll just simply reverse what you just did, and that comes in very handy for situations where you try something, you don't like it, and you don't want to go here and hit undo and hit undo again. Just hit Control Z, and it's just basically to undo your last action. We went over the rolling undo tool, the rate stretch tool. I'll go back to that since we're going to use it. The slip tool is basically I'll go ahead and make a cut again, because you need a cut to show these. The slip tool is just basically going to actually move your clip in the timeline. So you can see here where we're actually switching up. So it's basically changing the in and out point of the clip within the timeline itself, rather than having to go up here and do it. So and I actually don't use this function that much, so we'll go ahead and Control Z and V, go back to our selector. The slide tool, I don't really use that much. The pen tool is just a selector tool, which V does the same thing. And then our hand tool is just for selecting something. And we have the magnifying glass here that I'll show you an easier way to do that. So we're gonna bring that back, and that actually perfect into leading into the next part of this thing I want to show you on the sequence, is that you have this bar down here, and we'll just we'll select right here. You're gonna see you have a different perspective on how the timeline fits in within this window. So this bar basically expands and contrasts it. If we expand it out, it's going to expand the timeline. So now it's made it wider. So now we can see everything. We can see, and we can make it as wide as we want. So that's good for seeing what the length of your clip is, or seeing how long your project is. The disadvantage of that is when you make it wide like that, is that all your edits are going to be off, because you can't get precise moments where the edits are happening. It's going to be too crammed together. So if you expand this like that and bring it in, it's going to give you a closer look to your edits, and you can do more precise editing rather than having to squeeze it in with such a small compressed timeline. So we'll go ahead and make some cuts here. What I'll do is I'll go hit C. I'll hit my cut button, and C will bring up the razor blade. So I'm getting ready to do this. I'll get this where a point where I feel comfortable at. So we'll go ahead and start playing this, and I'm going to make some cuts. So what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for, performance shots that kind of stand out. So right there we got the hands. He's got the hands involved. The beat comes in. It's a good spot. We're actually going to cut that right there. And I'm actually going to select this and hit the delete button on the keyboard. So we're starting from here. So this is going to be the start of our cut. So just for demonstration purposes, we'll just end that there. So we'll go to the next one. See, I like where the hands are involved again. I like performance where shots where there's actually like, movement along, and you can see movement. You don't necessarily have just someone standing there looking at a camera. So we hit that cut button again, and that create a new cut. Now we're going to have this part right here that's not getting used. So we'll go ahead and hit the delete, and now we'll see how far we want to take this on our next one. Alright, so we'll just cut it right there. And then we have another part. Right there, the hands are up again. And what I always do when I make a new cut, I always hit the delete button so I know where I'm starting at. So we'll end it there. And when I edit these shots, it's basically going all off of feel, the performance, how it fits in with the overall part of the song that you're hearing, as well as how the artist is looking. So right up there again, we have another. Right up there, we have more hand movement. I'm big on, like I said, I'm big on motion in shots. I like people being actively involved in shots. So you can see right here, we got a little pattern going along here, and we're seeing black now because we have these actually tracks below it unselected. So alright, so that we'll cut that right there, and I'm actually going to work, and what I do is when I work on these tracks, I start from the top and work down. It's just an easier workflow that way. So we're actually going to turn on this track, And now, so now we're actually going to see that track again. Right there we have some movement going on, so I'm going to select that, delete what's before it. We'll go ahead and end that. And like I'm when I do these cuts, I usually don't want to do more than 2 or 3 seconds per cut, and I usually like to do it on the beat if it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then we'll let it drag out. But for something like this that has a very hard beat, I like to try and cut it to the beat as much as possible. Now you're gonna watch right there. Now obviously he flubbed the word there, so we're not gonna use that shot. So we'll just use this shot here, make the cut, delete what's before it. Alright. Now we're on. Now right there the camera was moving, so and I don't want this curtain in the shot at all, so now he's actually in the frame. Make the cut, delete what's behind it. We'll go ahead and end it there just because the beat. Alright, right there we'll make another cut, delete what's before it. And you can see it kicked into that track that we had cut right above that, and it goes right back to the track that we're working on right now. So we're not gonna and what I usually do is just for the sake of playback, if there's something playing up here, I want to delete everything that's below it. So we'll go ahead and kill that. So right there, there's a cut. Delete what's before it. Now we're actually going to have these clips right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make cuts where all these clips are, the same exact cut points as the ones above it. Hit the V, and I'm just going to simply select everything that's above it. I mean every clip that has something above it, and I'm going to delete them, and it's just going to make the playback smoother. It's alright. So now we've got these two tracks, we've got some basic cuts there. We're going to bring in the first track. Now, usually when I do these edits, the track that's on the bottom is kind of like my safe track, just because there's instances where it's like you might have 3 different versions of the performance, the 3 angles or whatever, 3 different shots, and say they mess it up. You know, there's that one word that they can't get out of their mouth, that they stumble on every single track. I always try to leave this one on the bottom alone. And you're going to see right there, when we had the track above it, it kicked right into that. Now when that's done, it goes right back to the first one. And it's going to do that same one for that one. And now we're going to do the same thing again. This is just a workflow issue, just for smoother playback. I'm going to make all the cuts where I have footage above it, right there, and we're just going to delete this, and it's basically just killing everything that's below it, because like I said before, when you have several 4K clips stacked on top of each other, it's a lot of times frees up the processor or the video card. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we got some performance things. I'm actually going to look for some slow-mo shots. And go through here, look for right here, and you're gonna, when you play it, you're gonna see, there we go, perfect. It's slow-mo, and we'll just select this little part here. So you're gonna hit the I on the keyboard and hit the out, and you're just gonna drag your video down. Now, I always, since you have performances on these tracks, I like to keep the slow-mo stuff on its own track, just for the sake of a workflow and a smooth workflow. So we throw this up here, so now it's going to kick into that, and when that clip's done, it's going to bring it right back. And one thing that's gets used a lot now, and we'll actually bring this in just so it's easier to see, is when we take these slow-mo clips and we speed them up and slow them down. So what we'll do is we'll hit our C on the keyboard for our cut tool, and we'll basically make it in and out. And what we can do now, this goes right into the rate stretch tool, which is R, or it is also this tool right here. If you hit R, you're going to see there's your rate stretch tool. Now if you bring this closer, what it's going to do, if you make it smaller, it's going to speed the clip up. If you make it longer, it's going to slow it down. And what happens is, you're going to see here, it made it faster. And since we made a cut right in the middle of that and we sped it up, it smoothly transitions right back into the slow part. So we can take this clip and we can make it longer, and I'll show you what happens with. Problem is, when you slow it down so much, you get this jittery playback. So we'll get Control Z just to undo a jit, and that's where your rate stretch tool comes into play. Now we can even apply it to a performance clip, which I don't normally do, but we'll go ahead and I'll bring this in real quick, and it's not going to be synced with the audio. Now you're going to have this arrow right here. Basically that's going to let you make a clip shorter, make it longer, make it shorter, longer, and then you'll have that on both ends. So once you get that, you can make it shorter or longer. So now this is actually a slow-mo clip, but we actually can make this faster. So we'll just bring it in, make it smaller with the rate stretch tool, and you see it sped it up. Now we undo that, we make it real small. There we go. It's gonna go real fast. See? Super fast. So that's what the rate stretch tool does. So I've showed you the basics of working on the timeline and editing, what the tools are. The main tools, you're always going to use your cut tool, your selector tool, and the rate stretch tool when it's applied. I'm actually going to stop this video right here, because the next thing I'm going to go into is adding an effect, and adding different kinds of special shots on a timeline to add production value and make your video look a lot more effect oriented, and whatever you want to call it. But I'm going to go ahead and end this here, and I thank everybody for coming in and checking this out, and hope you learned a couple things, and please follow along to the next video.